Most business owners will tell you when they're being honest that the larger the business grows, the more it feels like a prison because the more it requires from them. This is a core fundamental paradigm shift. I think it's probably the number one misconception that people in general have about what it means to be a business owner and business owners have about what it means to be a business owner. And that is this. Startup can be fun. Startup can be optimistic. There's a camaraderie that exists. But it's exhausting, isn't it? It's exhausting because you're the person doing everything.
Wouldn't it be great to be able to download the best business strategies from absolute experts in their field? Well, you're in luck because in today's episode of the Make It Happen show, that's exactly what you can do. I'm Tim Morris, the CEO of the Entourage, and today we're joined by an industry expert to help you make it happen. Let's get into it.
Hey team, Jack Delosa here, entrepreneur, investor, and founder of the Entourage, and welcome to this episode of the Make It Happen podcast. In this episode, we're going to deep dive into how do you go from being a startup to being a scale-up? How do you go from business operator to business owner? How do you go from being the person doing everything in your business to being the person leading and shaping everything? What we're really talking about is how do we go from being a reactive, somewhat chaotic startup to being a scalable organization that can grow beyond you. Now, this episode is the final one in this season, which is all centered around how do you build a structurally sound 8-figure company that can grow beyond you and grow beyond your operational involvement such that you can build a meaningful company that can grow beyond your day-to-day input. Where I want to start this conversation is by talking about, here at the Entourage, we've worked with tens of thousands of business owners over 150 different industries. And I myself have started, built, invested in multiple companies spanning coaching and training, retail, food retail, biotech, aviation, finance, luxury real estate. Some businesses have grown to become unicorns, which is going from $0 to $1 billion inside of 10 years. And what I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt is that the journey of the entrepreneur is largely universal. And usually it goes something like this. Entrepreneur starts business. And as entrepreneurs, we have a good feel for the marketplace and we have a good degree of empathy for the consumer. And at a high level, when we're starting out, we can envisage what product or service we can build that will address that market demand and speak to that consumer need. And at a high level, we're able to triangulate those three forces to create something out of nothing, to alchemize a business where previously there wasn't one. And we're good at doing that. In the beginning, what drives the growth of the business are the things that come really naturally to us as entrepreneurs. It's drive, it's hustle, it's break through brick walls, it's improvise, it's make it up as we go along, it's cover up the stuff-ups along the way, right? This is an entrepreneur playing the role of alchemist, playing the role of leader. This is where you were born to play. And at that stage of the game, the business is of such a size that one person can wrap their arms around it. What inevitably happens is the business grows and the business grows and the business grows and the business grows, and it eventually gets to a point where it's too big for one person to wrap their arms around. We're now doing more marketing. We're bringing more people through the door. We're doing more sales. We've got more customers to serve. There's more operational complexity. There's more money coming in, more money going out. The team is larger. There's more HR issues. And it's this point we find the entrepreneur buried in spreadsheets, optimizing CRMs, putting out daily fires, managing HR issues, trying to write systems to make the team more productive, managing weekly cash flow. We've taken the entrepreneur who is brilliant at leading from the front and we've buried them in operational detail. And there's a few things that are wrong with this. Number one, we're not good at it. Number two, it's not why you start a business. And number three, it's definitely not your highest and best use in terms of what you can contribute to your business. It's at this point where the entrepreneur has become operations manager at best or admin assistant at worst. And we often go into business as entrepreneurs in search of freedom, right? Commercial freedom, creative freedom, lifestyle freedom, financial freedom. But what happens is the larger the business grows, the more it serves to inhibit our freedom. Most business owners will tell you, when they're being honest, that the larger the business grows, the more it feels like a prison, because the more it requires from them. And so the paradigm shift here is this. What got you to where you are is not going to get you to where you need to be. You need to go from being the person doing everything to building an organization with the right structure, which is a word we'll deep dive into during this episode, such that you can be the person leading everything. Hear me when I say this, team. This is a journey about going from startup to scale up. Now, how do you know if your business is a startup? It's reliant on you. You're doing everything. You're either doing everything or you're overseeing everything. You're wearing all the hats. If you left the building, the performance drivers of the business would start to drop and decline, and shortly after, the performance of the business would start to drop and decline. What's a scale up? A scale up is an organization that can grow sustainably without you being operationally involved. And I'm going to explain exactly what I mean by that in this episode. But hear me when I say this. This is a core fundamental paradigm shift. I think it's probably the number one misconception that people in general have about what it means to be a business owner, and business owners have about what it means to be a business owner. And that is this. It is not an entrepreneur's job to market, sell, and deliver a product. It is our job to build a business that can market, sell, and deliver a product. It just so happens that in the beginning, you need to be the one marketing, selling, and delivering the product. That's going to be, for many of us, a necessary starting point. Unless you raise a bunch of capital and employ a bunch of people to start off with, which I don't suggest you do, because there's value in that initial startup stage. There's value in being the person doing everything, because you get a visceral, deep understanding of consumer and you build a visceral, mechanical understanding of your business, which you're going to need if you want it to scale appropriately. However, the problem occurs when we stay there. Startup can be fun. Startup can be optimistic. There's a camaraderie that exists. But it's exhausting, isn't it? It's exhausting because you're the person doing everything. And so startup is a great stage to move through. Terrible place to live. While it might be necessary for you to market, sell, and deliver a product while you're laying the foundations of the business, we want to get you to a point where you are playing the role of entrepreneur, not technician, where you have built a business that is marketing and selling and delivering a product without your operational involvement. The first thing we need to understand, team, is the 4 hats. And so we need to understand this. As entrepreneurs, we can be wearing any number of 4 hats. We can be wearing please write this down. The first hat we can be wearing is the hat of technician. The technician is the person or the people with the hands on the tools. You're wearing the hat of technician when you're doing. We can be wearing the hat of the manager, which is the person managing the people with their hands on the tools. The person managing the people with their hands on the tools. We can be wearing the hat of the leader, which is very distinct and different from manager. A lot of traditional business thinking and literature and courses and so-called experts conflate management and leadership as if they're the same thing. They're not. They have nothing in common. Other than the fact that there's people at the center of both of them, they have nothing in common. Leadership is this. Please write it down. To what extent are my people intrinsically motivated to perform? To what extent are my people intrinsically motivated to perform? Leader is about to what degree do we have a vision that you, your team, and your customers care about? Leadership is, what are the values that bind us, that we can recruit according to, we can hire and fire according to, we can market according to, we can sell, we can build products according to? What are the unique values that define us and capture our unique essence? Leadership is, how do we treat one another? Not how do we say we treat one another, not how do our values say we treat one another. How do we treat one another? Leadership is, what's the feel of the place? Very distinct from manager. Management is numbers, KPIs, project development, project management, performance management, weekly accountability, weekly one-on-ones. That's management. Management is head, leadership is heart. Every great organization needs both. So the first hat is technician, the second hat is manager, the third hat is leader, the fourth hat that you can be wearing is the hat of the entrepreneur. And when you're wearing the hat of the entrepreneur, it's probably more operationally diluted than what you might have previously thought. When you're wearing the hat of entrepreneur and only the hat of entrepreneur, what that looks like is this. I'll attend a board meeting every 2 months. I'll review the agenda. I'll add any agenda items. I'll add any questions I might have. I'll help develop the strategy. Mr. or Mrs. CEO, here are the keys. Drive. Good luck. If you need networks, call me. If you need capital, call me. I'm here for support. If you're not performing, I'll call you. Here are the keys. Drive. That's entrepreneur. Entrepreneurs build assets. And we build assets that work without us. Most business owners, and this is stage dependent, life stage dependent, business stage dependent. Most business owners don't just want to be wearing the hat of the entrepreneur. They want to be wearing the hat of entrepreneur and leader, right? It's like, Jack, I love my company. I don't want to just attend a board meeting every 2 months. Like, I want to be recruiting people and developing people and, you know, shaping the engine as it develops and moving us into new markets and working on the stuff I love. I just don't want to be buried in technician. Right? And so you might want to get to a point where you're wearing the hat of entrepreneur and leader, or you might want to get to the point where you're just wearing the hat of entrepreneur, right? If this is a business that you want to set up to run completely without you, or if you're nearing retirement and that's a priority, or if you want to sell the business. But in most cases, in my experience, entrepreneurs generally want to be wearing the hat of entrepreneur and leader. And so you want to get to a point where you're wearing the hat of entrepreneur and leader 90% of the time. You're wearing the hat of manager 5% of the time, and you're wearing the hat of technician 5% of the time. Why do I say you're still playing technician 5% of the time? It's like, Jack, I built a business that can run without me. Why on earth am I still playing technician 5% of the time? And the reason for that is this. Team, a lot of what we're talking about now is about building structure, building an organization that can scale beyond you. Please don't mistake anything I'm saying for build yourself an ivory tower. The ivory tower will kill you. The ivory tower will kill your business. It will disconnect you from your team, from your consumer, from the business, and that leads down a road that you don't want to go down. And so for that reason, we still play technician 5% of the time to stay connected to consumer, stay connected to your product or service, stay connected to the business, stay connected to the team. Now, some of you might be thinking, Jack, I'm a personal trainer. I love training people. I don't want to just train people 5% of the time. Okay, that's great. Let's build the business to a point where it doesn't require you to be in technician 80% of the time, 50% of the time, so that you could play technician only 5% of the time. But then you're being personal trainer, being technician as much as you want to. It's just that you're being technician because you want to, not because you have to. Because when you have a business where you have to be technician, when you have a business where you are the bottleneck, everybody suffers. You suffer, the business suffers, your team suffers, and your customer suffers because everything has to come through one person and there's so many hours in a day. Nobody ever builds a great company being the one point of failure and the one point of conduit for everything that goes on in a business. It can't happen. And so even if you love being in technician, we still build a company that can work without you and scale beyond you. We just do it to give you choice so that you can be in technician because you want to, not because you have to. Now, how do we go from technician to entrepreneur? How do we go from technician to manager to leader entrepreneur? And the answer is by building structure. by building structure. Team, this is a really important point. When founders build businesses, in the absence of a central blueprint that gives you structure to think into, your business is just a reflection of your personal strengths and weaknesses. Meaning right now, if you pause to think about this and feel into it, right now, the areas of your business that are highly developed and going well are the areas of the business where you are strong, you enjoy being, and you've developed a high capability in. The areas of the business that are underdeveloped because they're the areas of the business where you are underdeveloped. And often the key unlock to navigating your next stage of growth is not by making the areas that are developed even better, although we do that too, but is going, what are the core anchor points? What are the core components where we are weakest that are completely holding us back and influencing every other area of the business? And how do we get them to a point where they're satisfactory, then good, then great? And that's not necessarily you doing that. It's by building an engine in those areas where we become strong across all of the different aspects in our business. But we need a central blueprint, which I'm going to give you in a moment, to think into. The other thing I want to say about structure is this. From structure comes leverage, right? And so when you're in startup and everything is dependent on you, if the business requires 1 unit of output, i.e. something needs to be done, something needs to be achieved, your answer as the founder is, well, I'll just put in 1 unit of input. And so for everything that needs to be done, if you're doing it or overseeing it, it's 1 unit of output equals 1 unit of input from you. And that's an unsustainable strategy because it leads to 60, 70, 80, 90-hour weeks, which leads to burnout, which leads to you falling out of love with your business. What structure does is this. Once we have built an organization that has the right people and the right structure, you now have leverage. You have a machine where you put in 1 unit of input and out pops 100 units of output. That's leverage. Leverage is the ratio from input to output. And in startup, our ratio is 1-to-1. I would say this ratio is the most important ratio in your entire world. What is the degree to which your inputs gain leverage and become exponentially more productive than solely just the energy and effort that you personally put into them? That will determine the growth curve of your business more than any other number in the company. And so in startup, everything is improvised. In scale up, everything is orchestrated. Structure enables us to capture best practice so that it becomes infinitely replicable. And it all starts by having a central blueprint to think about our business through. Something that enables us to go from chaos and confusion to structured and scalable. Team, please write this down. Every business has 6 elements. Every business has 6 elements. It doesn't matter whether you're a business-to-business organization, business-to-consumer, online, offline, a hybrid of both. Every business has 6 elements. I want you to think, for the purpose of this conversation, I want you to think about your business as a production line. And I know that takes a little bit of the magic out of it, you know what I mean? I think businesses are organisms that have a soul unto themselves, right? And so I think about business in a lot more depth than just a production line. But for the purpose of this conversation, I want you to think about it momentarily as a production line. The first element out of the 6 elements is marketing. This is the genesis for everything else. This is where we generate interest and attention. This is where we get in front of people and start to educate them around what are their problems, what are their desired solutions, and how does our offer map to solving their challenges and achieving their solutions. Marketing is the genesis for everything else. In startup, businesses are marketing on an ad hoc or reactive basis or not at all. We want to get to a point where your marketing is doing 3 things. Please write them down. Number 1, building your brand, growing your audience, and generating the right quantity of the right quality leads. meaning it's building brand, it's growing your audience of people who know you, like you, and trust you, and it's generating the right amount of right quality leads to fuel your sales engine. That's marketing. That's element number one. It needs to be turned into an engine and a system that generates leads profitably. The core barrier that prevents startup companies, and you could be doing $50 million and still be a startup company. The number one barrier that prevents startup companies from leaning more into their marketing is they still view their marketing as an expense. And it is until you develop a audience building and lead generation system where you know that for every dollar you spend in marketing, it returns $3 back. That's where we want to get to. We want to get you to a point where for every dollar you spend in marketing, you know it has a positive ROI. Because when that happens, what do you now have? You now have an unlimited marketing budget. If every time you spend $1 on marketing, you know you make 3 back, ROAS, return on advertising spend, you now have an unlimited marketing budget. The second element is sales. This is where we convert that interest and attention that we generate in marketing into a paying customer. Most business owners do not have a defined process around how they move people from I'm interested, I know you, I like you, I trust you, to I'm buying from you. Right? Most business owners just sell intuitively. It's never something that they systemize the sales process. As such, most founders are the main revenue generators in their business. And if your sales are dependent on you and you're doing 100 other things across all these 6 elements of the company, well, then that has an inherent glass ceiling fixed on your business that we can never get past until we solve that problem. And so we need to get really good at developing a sales process that bottles. How do we move somebody from I'm interested to I'm buying? And once we've got that process, we've now got something that can be trained. It can be delegated. It can be managed. It can be measured. It can be optimized. It's crazy to us that so many businesses systemize so many different parts of their business, except the one part of their business that generates the revenue, which is the sales. And so element number 1 is marketing, generating interest and attention. Element number 2 is sales. The third element is product development and delivery. Now, I use the term product for both product and service-based businesses because I believe if you're a service-based business, you should view your service as a product, meaning how do we bottle it? How do we capture the magic such that we can scale its magic? Therefore, I use the term product. And so everything, if I'm your consumer, everything that happens to me after I buy falls under this third element of product development and delivery. This is where you develop your products. This is where you source your products. This is where you deliver your products. This is where the customer journey happens. This is where everything happens. Most business owners spend most of their time in product development and delivery. And if you currently spend most of your time in product development and delivery, you don't have a business, you have a job. And so we need to go from being the person delivering the products and services to building out an engine that can scalably deliver your product to more customers without further exertion from you. The fourth element, team, is operations. Operations is the internal workings of the business. It's the technology that underpins the business. It's the systems. It's the processes. The fifth element is finance. This is where we count and manage the money. Most businesses don't develop an appreciation for financial management until they've felt the pain of financial mismanagement for an extended period of time. You have to understand, particularly as your business grows, if you're doing over, say, $500K or $1 million a year, you have to be making financially informed decisions, right? If you aren't looking at meaningful financial reporting that shows you where the money's coming from, where the money's going to, and when, then you are flying blind. And so finance is about how do we start to get in tune with the financial performance of our organization so that we can make financially informed decisions. And then element number 16 is people. This is the element that brings all of the first 5 elements to life. This is where your culture sits. This is where your vision, your mission, your values, your management, the management cadences we were talking about before, it all sits under people. Most founders have a culture that is dependent on the founder. The founder leaves the building, the culture starts to dissipate, the founder's gone for too long, the culture dissolves. Please write this down. I must build a culture that is structurally ingrained in the fabric of the company. I must build a culture that is structurally ingrained in the fabric of the company. You cannot scale an organization based on your energy alone. It has to be infused through our vision. It has to be captured through our values. It has to be trained through our people. It has to be communicated through our induction. So it doesn't matter whether you're in the building or not. The heartbeat and the essence of the organization scales as it does. This whole thing that as an organization grows, the culture gets worse is only true if we haven't structurally ingrained the culture. When you structurally ingrain your culture, as your organization scales, your culture expands and gets better with it. So team, I want you to take 3 macro takeaways out of this episode. Firstly, you want to make it your intent to move from startup to scale up, from having a company that's reliant on you to having a company that can scale beyond you. Remember, it's not your job to market, sell, and deliver a product. It's your job to build a business that can market, sell, and deliver a product. The second thing is at any given moment, I want you to be conscious of what hat am I wearing and how do I build the revenues, build my cash flows so that I can build my team and my structures such that I can go from technician to manager to leader and entrepreneur. And thirdly and lastly, are you building a business holistically? Are you building a cross-functional company across all of the 6 elements? Because that is what will make your company scalable and sustainable.
Thanks for tuning in, and I hope you learned something in the episode that you can apply to your business straight away. To keep learning with us, make sure you subscribe and also hit the bell icon so you're notified of new episodes when they're released. You can also follow us on @The Entourage Official on all the social media platforms. So thank you, and I can't wait to see you in the next episode.